Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four Checks cast. We are your Four Checks. We've said our names a million times. I don't know if we need to keep repeating them.
No, we're
They're
very
on-
bad at that. So
We're very bad at that, anyways. They're on the screen.
Don't attack me like
We're
that.
here to give you. We're here to give you all that is going on in the current universes community, and we have had some big stuff. Obviously, we've got the apocalypse to talk about, but before we get there, we want to talk about the ban list. Now, I know there was a lot of questions about what we might see on this ban list, if we would see anything really on this ban list. Given that, like, before, when they were doing monthly ban lists, when it was close to an event, it seemed like they were really scared to do one. But now with them doing more events, it seems like they're getting a little more comfortable keeping them close together. What were you guys thinking when about if there were going to be any hits or not before we get into what it actually had?
Yeah, I was kind of on the assume nothing's gonna change. Like the meta looked fine to me.
I was kind of null. I after the past few lists, I've kind of given up trying to expect things out of ban lists.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It is
I-
also your base rate. Yeah,
You know, I think sort of getting into my rant early, but
Sure. Go
I
ahead.
think that there's loosely three reasons why you might ban something or errata something. Right. One is it's just the win rate's too high. It's too meta dominant. Right.
Yeah.
Another is maybe it's not meta dominant, but you decide it's too meta restrictive, like telling people they need to build X to beat this thing as like a higher bar than you think is okay for having an open competitive field or whatever. And then the third reason is just like the designers look at the gameplay pattern and say, we don't want this in our game.
Sure.
And those last two are just so subjective that, and even like, you know, from meeting to meeting or week to week, like these bans are the outcomes of probably a Slack conversation or a meeting or 2 or 3 meetings or something like that. And these are human things. And when you're dealing with something that's this subjective, you can land in different places at different times where 1 month it's more aggressive, 1 month it's more conservative, just because of like human dynamics.
Sure. And
so like I don't like, if we're doing a prediction game, like sure, but I'm not going to have too many serious expectations of anything getting banned or not getting banned unless there's like an obvious meta dominant thing going on.
that's totally fair.
That's reasonable.
Will, what about you?
I mean, I like to be hopeful. Like when I see cards, like when I see interactions in cards that just don't feel super healthy, I want them to be proactive about bans, but at the same time, I understand that they want to get as much data as possible before they feel like, hey, we need to do this, or hey, we don't need to do this.
Yeah.
I was expecting something on this ban list, but I wasn't going to be surprised if there wasn't anything, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's kind of where I was. Like I was kind of 50-50. The only thing that I was really going in and like, man, I'm really crossing my fingers they hit this was probably Devil Jin, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. But like, and it had less to do with power level and more just that like I think that deck is like not allowing characters to play the game in a fun way when Aerial Goblin Bolt hits the field. But I'm like a known revocator. Like I've
Sure.
heard people want to reprint revoke, and I said absolutely never.
I mean, the key point there is the fact that it's repeatable. Like, it's consistent.
Yes.
Like, revoke, you play that 4 times, it's done. It's gone.
Yeah, like when I saw
But this
attack,
is every turn.
when I saw attack revoke, I was like, oh, maybe, you know, since like it's an attack, you got to get it in the card pool. It's a 3 check. Maybe that'll be fine. And then and then I saw that Devil Jin could do Repealy, and I'm like, okay, no, never mind.
Right.
But then we get the ban. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, Diligent's a really interesting case though, because like there are so many tropes of, you know, we've seen characters like Asui 1-dot, or I mean Ojiro to an extent, Ochako. I'm trying to think who else is in this club of like not having Mikasa, Pony, right? Not having progressive ability is the way to play the game. And here comes a character that plays double progressive ability.
Oh, sure.
And like all the most important characters, they're all 7-handers. Like it's 7-handers game. And then here's a 5-hander who has these very weird mechanics, these very weird drawbacks. And then he gets one good card. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is the worst thing that's ever happened." It's like, it's kind of there's some complexity here. But at the end of the day, he is a 35 health character that's very hard to kill.
Yeah.
On top of everything else he's got going on, and I think it's not crazy what they landed on.
Well, and before we really get into like exactly the specific character, let's make sure everyone in the chat knows when
Yes.
the ban list actually came. there were 2 hits. Devil Jin got errata to a your turn restriction, and why am I blanking on saying vertical
Maneuvering equipment.
Yeah, got straight up the ban. No errata, no ifs, ands, or buts. It is gone.
Yeah. We have added challenger cards and characters. That's it. That's now pretty firmly established.
Yes.
We can go back to hitting people with a newspaper whenever they say we should errata some card that doesn't fit into those 2 buckets.
Yeah, the only exception should ever be like functional errata.
Are you telling me we're not going to give Botan only to Mob Strike? Dang it.
No. Maybe if we fully reprint the card again.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit. Let's talk kind of what the implications are for each one. Let's start with Devil Jin, because this was kind of like, I don't want to say the character came out of nowhere when it started making rounds, because before EU, there had been a few webcam tournaments where we had seen its success, and it's not like Devil Jin was a bad character even before that. I mean, anybody who had played against a Devil Jin who knew what they were doing knew that deck could kill you. That deck could pump some incredibly high damage, and there were a lot of like different ways it could be played. I saw like builds that were looping Feather back before teaming was really like there to do it. Like I've seen a lot of variations of I want to play a bunch of attacks despite having a ton of progressive, do a bunch of damage and murder you. What do you guys think mechanically changed with the introduction to Aerial Goblin Bolt when it comes to like this character that became this is too bad?
Listen, I laid out my 3 groups before. I think this is a category 3. I think it's just a play pattern ban.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just the designers look at, put Revoke into your card pool every enhance, and said, no, we're just not going to have this. Like, maybe they didn't think about Devil Jin when they were playtesting Critical Role. Maybe they did, but they were like, it won't be real, whatever. Right? And if something doesn't show up at tournaments, then even if it's a stupid play pattern thing, you can ignore it.
Yeah.
But Devil Jin showed that he's going to show up at tournaments. He's going to be putting this into the game, and they don't want that to be into the game. And so, they just said it's like, regardless of the power level and like, can you metagame against it and how much winning is it actually doing and blah, blah, blah. They just don't want it to be a thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think for me the big issue with Devil Jin is I started touching on this in my instant ramble before you even introduced the ban list of he's a 5-hand size character, and they're clearly not afraid to do weird things with their characters and with their powerful cards these days. I can imagine that they said, listen, we want people who enjoy Yoga Mastery to experience Yoga Mastery. let's print Revokes into your card pool every turn. But you have the drawback, you fill up your card pool. It's harder for you to block now. And actually, the thing I like the most about this errata, and the frustrating thing about errata is that there's a million erratas, and if they start doing erratas on everything, everyone's going to say, solve every problem with an errata tuned to exactly my preferences and how to fix your card. So that's why I'm really glad we don't do that. Because if we can't even agree what the problems are, how can we possibly agree on a nuanced solution? But I love that you can actually poke Devil Jin now. Like, I actually really hated the play pattern of he holds whatever the hell card he wants and just says, hey, your attack's on that zone. I have 35 health and you need to outspeed me as I'm greedily building to the moon. Before we even talk about Aerial Goblin Bolt, to actually just land hits on him, he has to tell you it's fine for you to land a hit while he's being as greedy as he wants to and getting to get extra control checks out of his butt.
And then you start showing up to locals with Hiei to solve that problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at like what really changed with this character, because in fairness, he could do that before in terms of rezone anything. He could make something a high and hold a high block and make sure you can block it. But the character didn't feel like he could really do much control with that, because he's making everything faster basically when he does that, because he's putting stuff in his card pool that become permanent progressive. I think what shifted for me, and what I really think of when I'm like, this character bothers the crap out of me. I see a lot of people throwing fit about Nick. Why didn't we hit Nick? We hit Devil Jin, Nick's just as bad. But like, yes, on aggro, Nick is incredibly strong. But Nick has a clear weakness in like on defense, he doesn't have a ton of defensive abilities. His only defensive ability is kind of RNG focused, where he needs to like remove something that's also in his stage. And most of the time they don't even do that because they don't want to mill out. So I'm like, cool, this is a really oppressive offensive character that has a clear defensive weakness that you might be able to exploit. And that was kind of old Devil Jin. I look at new Devil Jin before the errata after Goblin Bowl. I'm like, great, not only is this character the offensive monster he always was. He now gets to play negate, like, what's that character, Jin? He gets to do Jin canceling upwards
Well,
of
it's Devil
4
Jin.
times a turn. Yeah, he's literally Devil Jin now. Canceling
I
4 times a turn, and they can be characters? No. I don't want that character to be able to do that level of control. Fuck you.
if they calculated that, if that was intentional, I kneel, dude. Oh my god. The Jin mechanic is canceling stuff.
It's
No.
literally 4D chess at this point.
Yeah.
So
Major key.
to me, I agree with Tim that, like, of the 3 types of bands there are, and when I look at Devil Jin, I'm like, yeah, that is a play pattern problem, because I am fine losing because a deck out aggroes me and he gets the aggro hand and the ability to aggress into me. I'm fine losing to a character that was a really good control character that slowed the game down enough that I lost to him. When a character feels like they can be doing both, and it just feels like no matter what way I'm playing on, they're doing that thing better, that's where I start to really resent a character. And that's kind of where Devil Jin was starting to land for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think, like, at some level, like, there's a black pill take of, like, they have to ban stuff as soon as people actually figure out the good builds of decks. Like, I think I certainly, like, tried to play some Devil Jin decks and was like, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. What, I'll leave it for someone else to figure out, whatever. Like, some of the stuff with exam strat, like, the mixed, like, exam strategy, manipulations of Zeke, like, dual threat attack, I think is really potent. Like, the Mega Burst stuff. Like, there's a lot of really good ideas in that deck. And if you don't have those ideas, even if you're doing something lame, something frustrating, if it's underpowered, it's, like, not going to be a problem at all, even if it's, like, got a stupid play pattern. And they're making lots and lots of stupid play pattern cards that just make underpowered decks, and so it's fine if you can play your jank nonsense that tries to mill someone by exiling all of their attacks with sweeping daggers or whatever. And, like, that's just, like, the price of doing business with powerful cards. So I don't know. I think, like, zooming out, I think my meta take is, like, you just kind of see what happens and let the results come in and then try to react to them in the most rational way. And I don't like to make too many sweeping declarations about, like, what play patterns are acceptable or not, I guess. Or, like, you know, if something is a dual threat, if it's, like, controlling you and defending you, it's like, yeah, well, just be good at one of those and you can probably overpower him in one angle at least.
Sure, and that's what we did
Yeah,
see in, like,
complex mixed strategy stuff. Like, this is actually the really good stuff is when you can play mixed strategy and force him to commit one way or the other and then run around him to the side. Like, that's actually the sweet game.
I mean, that's kind of like what Ymir was doing, right? Like, Ymir just, NEU was like, I'm going to out aggro you, at least in one of the games. And, like, when he got to transform, he just was so strong on offense, he could push through Devil Jin's abilities. Yes, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Obviously, like, I have my ideas about play patterns or whatever, but
Sure.
I think it's clear that design has play patterns that they don't like. Like, they've talked about turn 2 kills. I think
they like things more or less than other things for sure.
Yeah. I think the I'm blanking on the name. The strategist, the 2/5 flip, anti-draw card, getting the rolling back that we're not going to errata this and then just errating it was kind of a play pattern thing because, like, when it's actually in practice, it's just like, okay, this is dumb, right?
Yeah.
So they do some of that. They don't do a lot. They do a lot less of it these days than they used to, for sure.
Well, and I do kind of agree that, like, once you errata non-character cards, it really becomes a messy can of worms. And I get the challenger decks. We want people to be able to, in theory, rip them, take them straight to a tournament, and like, not get in trouble for it. So I think that's fine. But for non-challenger decks, I do look at that and I go, why? Guys, let's just ban if it's going to do something different, ban it and reprint it with its errata in a later set. Like, just make a different card that does what you wanted that thing to do. You know, you could have made a Shifting Glance that does the errata version, and then ban the original one. I think, like, in the case of Disarming, the wording is similar enough that, like, it didn't feel that disorienting to do that errata.
Right, because most people, if they don't know any better, that's what they expect the card to
Yeah,
do.
most people do not realize, like, the weird way that aborting a resolution.
Yeah, they put that errata out, and there were comments like, "What does this errata do?" And you had to, like, explain to them what the loophole was.
It's like, this actually is a big deal, but you just don't realize how.
Right.
Yeah, like, that would be, like, in a bug fix patch if we were in a digital card game, right? Like, it wouldn't change the words. It would just work the way that it's marginally more rational.
Yeah. But that wasn't the only hit.
Yeah, let's talk about VME. That's actually, Yeah, let's talk about VME and we can segue into the next topic after that. 'Cause
Yeah, so
this is actually
Yeah.
this is well calculated.
yeah, VME. This card has been kind of like a target for pretty much since release. Like it's been a thing that has bothered people in different variations of decks. Obviously, like Ryukyu gets slapped with the banhammer in part because of the number of blanks we were printing, but also because we gave her like the most amazing usage of momentum she's ever had off of that. We literally took a character enhanced quality ability off of Jean, a character that like Barlow will tell you that he thinks is viable on its own, and just slapped it on an asset, non-unique asset anyone can use. And it's, you know, it existed in Mimic, and then now
Mine's so
recently it's
cool. I
been
love Gene.
abused in Mitchell Chimino. Am I saying his last name right? Because I want to make sure he's a community member. I want to make sure I get it right.
I believe so.
Chimino.
Only
If someone in the
80%
chat knows I'm wrong, they are welcome to correct me. But are you guys glad to see this card gone? Let's just start with that.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm like, I was pro ban VME. It wasn't like a full-throated, man, I hate this card, I hope it goes kind of thing.
Sure.
I am pro. I was, pro, like I just, I just, I never hopeful and defended it, right? Like I appreciate the idea that if you get a bunch of momentum and you use it to win the game, that's how this is supposed to go.
Right.
I think just the state of affairs with the number of different characters and decks that can generate momentum very easily, combined with this not just being a way to win the game, but to just like terminally never lose the game. And being an asset, right? And partly just the format having limited ways to deal with assets. If they printed more asset hate, and we got a good piece in this set, but they just decided to hit it anyway.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't have been as bad. But just the circumstances that we're in, I think it was just too much.
Yeah.
I'm glad they printed VME. I'm not going to comment if I'm like kind of unsure if I'm happy. Like if I think the marginal like format health is probably better or worse. It's probably better. I don't know, but I'm marginally I'm afraid of fewer things in the format. I have less like how's my deck solve this bad situation.
I think with a card we're going to talk about later, when we're talking about kind of the new cards of AOT3, that one that resets everyone to 4 foundations. I know I was sitting at the prospect of like a Tarion or a Mimic being able to sit on this defensive card after resetting the board to 4 foundations. And I was like, oh, that sounds like that's going to be a miserable game state to sit through. And that's kind of how I felt with a lot of VME situations. And like, I know how to, I've built decks in ways that can handle VME. Like, part of the reason I love Tranquility of Death, one of my favorite cards from Critical Role, is just because that card actually says it's asset hate on death already, in a way that like people don't really always think about. And so I always felt semi-okay playing against it. But even with that being said, I still know when I was running decks that didn't have that, or I didn't draw it. I know when I was in Worlds and I played against Nate DeWalt's Mimic deck, I had to attack like 6 times to break through his board, and 80% of that reason was because he had gotten a good amount of momentum and he was sitting on like either 1 or 2 VMEs and just making everything full blockable at the right zone. And I'm like, cool. That's not fun. I'm not having a good time. I mean, I had a good time because I figured out how to break through it, but if I had failed to break through it, I would have been so tilted after that, because that would have been nightmarish.
You actually got to have you got to have like VME allowed you to play powerful cards and still have a positive gameplay experience, where instead of your opponent just dying, you actually had to try, and then you got to win. Like that's actually the best.
So I will actually, I will say in its credit, I actually kind of agree with Broberg. I am glad VME was printed. I think it created an interesting era where like you could not get caught as long as you're running the card. You could not get caught holding the wrong block zone. You could not get caught like, oh, I held lows and he's shifted to highs, I die.
Unless they killed your VME, they destroyed your momentum.
Yeah, and
Like,
so it's like
you were
there
never
was like
safe.
some
You were never safe.
play and counterplay to that. So like I think that is kind of cool that it existed.
Yeah, and I think this is. They even said it in the article. This is more of a like format restriction ban than a like people absolutely cannot build decks that beat this thing. They can. It's just they have to take, 30, 40, 60, whatever percent of their deck ideas off the table to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, if your character gives 0 speed boost and you aren't on one of the symbols that has a really strong, consistent asset hate, just sitting there and staring at a VME can seem like the game is already over, even if they haven't actually done much damage to you yet, and that can kind of suck. I think like people are kind of calling it out in the chat, and they're saying that momentum printing characters lost a big defensive piece, and it's true. I think also like VME came out right at the start of we're going to make sure the chaos symbol characters get free momentum so easily. And that has happened so much more with like Allura, and now like Annie's maybe one of the biggest examples of this. We've just printed characters that say momentum is free and we will get 1 billion of it.
I didn't realize that David Toombs was on this podcast now, man. Sacrificing Foundations is free, momentum is free, like it's all just free.
That's not okay. Hold on. Do not call me
not
David
free,
Toombs.
not free, but easier.
Discarding cards it's a benefit. It's not a cost at all.
Okay, hold on. I will say the case of Allura. Clearing a card from your card pool is a benefit.
You spend your character on that, dude.
You don't spend your character. That's a twice per turn ability.
It's a free twice per turn.
Yeah, but like you were deciding that this is going to be your character instead of a different character.
Sure. David and Jess are two sides of the same. So yeah, no, I have a question. Do you think it was a mistake to give VME the infinity symbol though? Because this will kind of transition us to what we're talking about.
No, I think that this is like, if there's one thing I can convince everyone in chat to never do again, is to never say it's infinity symbol and it's strong, therefore it goes in every deck, and therefore we should ban it. Like that chain of reasoning, please understand that like you're making a mistake when you think that way, and that there are always costs to everything you do. There's always a different thing you could have done instead, which is often better. And like if you look at tournament deck lists, VME was not everywhere. Like that's a like empirically testable claim to say, like, should this go in every deck? And the answer is no. A lot of decks should not play VME and did not play VME correctly, because it asked a lot of you, it would, like, if you just put it in every deck blindly and then you're like player 2 and losing and you draw VME, it's like, wow, a +1 mid block, great. I don't have any momentum. I can't get momentum. I'll try to attack to get momentum to try my VME, and they will full block twice, and I will be super dead with nothing to show for it. And that's because you shouldn't have put it in your deck. You shouldn't have tried to chase that. And infinity symbol cards just mean that they can go in every deck, but they'll naturally settle in their best homes. And it just means that their best homes might be on different symbols. They might be different shapes than like a monolithic's best home. And sometimes you want like a card like Colossal Detonation to only live in one place, because we should have untapping characters who can abuse it. But then you also just like print chaos characters who lose their checks and play a 12 deck really easily. And so it's going to get abused anyway if you want to be concerned about abusing things. I think abusing things is fun, actually.
Sure.
That's fair.
No, and this kind of spoil a little bit what we're saying in the next one. I think it's fine to have strong cards on the infinity symbol. Like, I love the 4-check attacks, and the 4-check attacks are filled to the brim with cards that are on the infinity symbol that are still good. But most of those cards feel like you kind of have to build around them to fit them in a deck. I think my concern with VME, and the reason I think I am okay with it being gone, while it did not belong in every deck, I play plenty of decks that don't use it. My Smiling Time deck never used VME. It did feel like it was too easy at times to just slot in and go, this is at least a fine choice. This is at least going to help me out in some percentage of games. And this is going to probably give my winning odds in certain matchups go up exponentially just by having access to this. And that's kind of where I'm like, this infinity symbol might be doing too much for being such a free slot in card. Hang on, people are going to kill me if I say the word free again. Such a cheap slot in card. Does anyone have any thoughts on VME before we move on to kind of our big topic for today?
No, we're already talking about Infinity.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we're good.
So there's a reason that we wanted to talk a little bit about the fact it's on the Infinity symbol. That's because there's been a lot of buzz in the community this week. David Toombs, as his name's been brought up a couple times already, posted a video called, I think it was The Infinity Problem, talking about the evolution of the Infinity symbol as we have seen it in AOT 1. And it is, and then we also had like Brody Wan, aka Chris Smith, hop on with Tam Cardwell and Zach Richards, and was going to hop on with Tim Keefe to talk about this as well. So it's really kind of gotten a lot of public attention. We kind of want to give our thoughts on where we feel like this set and these sets have gone in terms of evolving the Infinity symbol. Just for some context for people, because I know a lot of people think like, how frequent is the Infinity symbol really? If you look at the history of retro, if you like go to UVS Ultra and you literally click retro, the entire past the first page still doesn't get us past AOT 1, and that's not counting the AOT 3 cards. Like, it will literally take us well into that second page, and there were only 2 pages total of Infinity cards. So we have more cards in Infinity printed since AOT 1, since the entire history before that of Retro Now. So it's definitely an increase. And that leads us to the question of, first of all, why do you guys think design has gone in this direction before we say good or bad? I'm just curious.
I mean, the first and like the most obvious one to me is that they wanted Attack on Titan spotlights to be a thing. They wanted to say we're going to get a bunch of Attack on Titan fanboys who want to play just Attack on Titan cards, and like that was part of the motivation for the Giant Set 1, was that they just had to fill out this new attunement world and have enough cards that people could build decks that would be interesting. And Infinity cards are a good way to say, hey, everyone gets to play with this card. You open it in a pack and you just put it in a deck.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a lot of it. Anyone else have any thoughts as to kind of like what is the reasoning behind this, or do you guys think that's kind of it?
I would say that has anything to do with cutting the symbols in half for AOT, but with the number of Infinity symbols in Critical Role, I don't believe that anymore. Yeah, there's a decent amount there too.
I think it's probably a case by case. I think they made a decision to be more open to making Infinity cards. I think the reason for any given card being Infinity is probably a case by case.
Yeah.
And it probably should be, right? I think there are a variety of reasons why you might want a card to be Infinity. And, so long as you can, if you're trying to be a backseat designer, so long as you can look at a card and construct one of those viable reasons and apply it to that card, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand why they did this, right?
Yeah. I think a good example of this is, like, in terms of specific examples, you look at VME and you go, oh, we wanted all the Survey Corps members to, like, play this card. And so we either have to give it multiple, and given we're not doing, like, multiple symbols, we either have to give it multiple attuned symbols, which basically means it's Infinity at that point, because if you create more than 2 attuned symbols on a card,
yeah,
the amount of characters that can use it just shoot up exponentially. Or we at that point just slap the Infinity symbol on it and call it a day. And like, that makes sense. Or like the Titan cards. We're like, we don't really have a character that fits with, like, besides maybe Smiling, that really we look at and go, this is the character that is leading the major Titans, the big Titans. So let's give that Infinity, because now it's the looming threat. Everybody could face a Titan at some random point. Like, there's clearly some, like, flavor reasons for these things, even beyond mechanical. I agree, though. It probably depends a lot on the specific, and it is more of like, we've made this conscious decision.
I think cynically, some of these some Infinity Ultra Rares are just there to make the card more valuable.
Oh, sure.
Like, they clearly, it's not like they don't think about card values when they're designing things and making these decisions. And like, if they're not, especially if they're just like not sure what symbol to give it or whatever, right? That they might just say, we want to, this airship here, we're just gonna make it Infinity. We want, we want this to be a big card that everybody wants.
Well, and you'd be kind of crazy to pretend designers never have to think about the value of cards. They need product to be purchased. They need product to be opened. Yeah. If cards aren't good or aren't good enough to put on a character, then people aren't going to buy the set. And hey, if you have a few really good cards that you slap Infinity on, I mean, Airship is maybe a great example of this. I look at Airship and I don't immediately see the character that like abuses this card. Well, there are some that have come out since then, but I couldn't tell you like this symbol is going to mean someone's going to abuse it. But you slap a card that says, let's pick up any card in our card pool and be able to do that just for a commit and freeze cost. You know what? There is someone out there who's going to abuse that card. I would have a hard time imagining there isn't. And so we know that card now is going to make us more value. Now, I do want to kind of highlight some of David Tomb's points and kind of talk about what your guys' stance on them are, either agreeing or disagree. One thing David Tomb says in AOT1 about AOT1 and sort of AOT2 was that it was fine because the Infinity cards are bad. He doesn't really talk as much about the Titan attacks, which I don't think those are necessarily bad. But he says it's fine because they're bad or at least niche. And that the problem is the Infinity cards now are really universal. And there are two examples he gives. Like Filled with Doubt is a great starting one that he gives. This Infinity response, seal any attack. It's a Lyra response just on an action. Else doesn't give you the +3 to check, but sealing attack's the big part. What do you guys think about, like, is there any restrictions that we need to be thinking about when it comes to printing power level on Infinity cards? Like, do you hate when you see an Infinity card like VME just be really easy to slot in?
It's always easy to slot cards in until you put in all the cards that are easy to slot into your deck and you have 130 cards.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's the thing there.
That's really hard to fit in a deck.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of these cards, like I'm looking at the new ones, and I'm looking at them. I'm going like I don't hate this being a thing. I don't hate this having the Infinity symbol. Like I think Filled with Doubt is fine. I think the card is perfectly fine. Yeah. I have zero issue with that card being Infinity, for example. Like I think everyone should have access to something that seals an attack, and it's not bad. Before I say anything else. But I don't think this card's amazing. It's a sideboard card, or maybe like a card you run 1 or 2 of in your main deck. Like it's not a 4 of.
Yeah, actually. So trying to think through this answer made me realize I don't think we said that a reason designers might make an Infinity card is because they think it is important that every deck can put it in their deck.
Yes, that's right. One of the many reasons. Yeah,
an obvious, like almost tautological reason, but like people are fired up about the Falling Titans deck, right? Like the Flock, I'm going to build it back up, and then I'm going to echo my deck. I'm going to fake echo with the deck I just built. I'm going to play my 6 if I'm going to check a 6. My deck's all 6s, and I'm going to kill you with Falling Titans on turn 2 with nothing you can do about it. The game's already over. And if you lose to that 3 times, you might go home and say, well, what can I do about that? Oh, I got 4 copies of Filled with Doubt, for example. And that was the designers providing you the solution to your problem right there, and making sure that everyone could solve that problem. At very least, with 4 cards that they could put in their deck, no matter what deck they are, no matter what symbol they're on, they can fill it out and have a hand trap that can disrupt that. And then ideally, there's like a virtuous cycle where now the Flock deck slows down and says, I'm going to play counterplay, and we're going to have it back and forth instead of being a one-side conversation every match.
Right. Something I kind of noticed while I was doing all this, like transcribing like old deck lists for Justin, and you and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like it looks like we played so many more cards that just answered things in decks, and it's kind of like a thing that feels like we're kind of lacking in the newer metas and formats. Just maybe we just don't have it on symbol for a lot of characters, but like I don't know, it feels weird.
I mean, I think that a lot of the stories that a game was smaller. There weren't as many good cards or good decks. Sure. And so every deck would start with, well, what's my answer to Templar and Shield Ram? Because there really wasn't that much else you had to worry about.
That's right.
Grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and or like because of the diversity rule, also, you had to be ready for anything.
Prepare, yeah.
And Revoke is certainly a good way to be ready for anything, right?
Yeah,
those cards were better, right? By and large, right? A lot of the answer cards of the time were better than what we've had to date.
To pause real quick to catch people up to speed because my internet cut out for like a quick second. Basically, Will brought up the idea. I don't know why I called you William. Will brought up the idea that there were a lot more answers in old standard, that decks were built around the idea of like playing a lot more answers and things like that versus MHA onwards, where it feels like we're really playing more aggressive gameplays first rather than playing a lot more control and answers. So it's kind of just where we are.
Yeah, I think multiple is also part of this conversation.
Yeah,
Sure.
There are a lot of decks where the way you were going to die to them is they resolve a multiple on you.
Right.
And so Kapoken, anything that could cancel multiple or take it away was just automatically a big deal.
Sure.
Same thing with reversal, right? If you had
Yeah.
something that if Navose's decks were around, right, and you had a way to shut down reversals, that was important.
oh yeah,
And there was no deadlock, right?
yeah,
Right.
They were going to have 20 foundations. You think none of those are going to matter? You're not going to play a single thing that can deal with a foundation in your deck?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's fair. Like I'm getting into 2018 now when we started getting Mortal Kombat and Cowboy Bebop, and I'm noticing people's attack to foundation ratio is ever so slightly changing.
yeah, because deadlock says you don't get to
Deadlock's
just
a
build
thing now. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think some of it is like it is a lot of things. It's card pool printing or cards pre-printed. I don't think if you look at like MHA 1 onwards, which is where a lot of people nowadays really cut their teeth on deck building and things like that, you just don't see near as many answered cards being printed, or they feel relatively high costed. I mean, I look at a card like Decoy Duplicate, a card I love, but Decoy Duplicate removes itself, has to have a momentum, clears the opponent's card pool, and gives them a draw for it. And that card
Sweet.
can feel, and it's a 2/4.
Sweet Nothings was a staple in its time.
And well, counterexample,
Sure.
think of condescending explanation. There are some people who say condescending explanation is a staple that goes in all my decks. I guess it's maybe on somewhat poor symbols or whatever.
Yeah.
But in the same way, there's a ton of people who say, well, yeah, I'm going to play an evil deck, and I'm not going to play. That card's not on my radar at all. It's too expensive. It's too pricey to include in my deck. I'd rather play some, a cheaper card, more efficient card, whatever. And like, I think that we've just like fleshed out that middle ground where if you want to play control pieces, they're around, or like Nonagon, like that's a void attuned card. You can put that in any void character can play that card.
Yeah.
All sorts of people build void characters who don't, and like Deku skips their Nonagons because they just like whatever reason they prefer to spend their marginal value in some other portion of their deck than play these control pieces. Kind of back in the day, like if you didn't play card red-handed, you were punting. Like you weren't getting a card as good as Rifle Arm to put in that slot instead. You should just been playing card red-handed.
Oh, absolutely. When I was going through stuff, like anytime I'd see a deck that didn't have caught red-handed, I'd be like, "What on earth are they playing that's better than this?"
It would be kind of interesting to see like really sit there and compare old head versus new head deck building and see like how much of this is just the era you grow up in and what the card pool like was at the time. Because I do wonder like if the how much the way early MHA was designed has influenced how people build decks, even though like, yeah, you guys are right. Nonagon exists. Crazy card. I see people neglecting to even sideboard Barrier Shield, even though there are still decks that are playing really tall attacks on you. Hero's Upbringing is one that like Tim Keefe called out a few weeks ago, and when we were doing the preview for Denver, and like that card is crazy. That card against a deck that attacks multiple times says I'm gonna seal your character, and I've yet to see it show up in a major deck list. Maybe I'm missing one. I think there might have been like some in the sideboard in EU, but it's made very little appearances, despite the fact that it is a crazy powerful effect when it goes off.
Yeah, you want to not die to Reagan on 2?
Yeah, it's a very good way to not die to Reagan.
Now, you're blowing up a foundation and you're going to take some hits in the process here, so you better kill him back.
Yeah,
right.
Which is part of the problem, but
But it definitely feels like there are decks that should be at least thinking about this card in the sideboard. Devilgin's a great example of that as well. Like, great, you can block the first 2 Devilgin attacks, or hope if you're hopeful, and then it's like, great, now the rest of yours are coming in for printed damage. I don't care about that. I do think that's very interesting how deck building may have changed. We are tangenting a little bit, so I do kind of want to move us back into talking about Infinity itself, because I think I agree with like Filled with Doubt. This is a card that should have the Infinity symbol. Tam uses a great term, Canary in the Coal Mine. He talks about canary cards that if a card is a canary card where it wouldn't see play in a really diverse meta necessarily, but when there's one really abusive thing like a Falling Titans, that people need to have that answer for, it starts to see play. And I look at a card like Fill It Down, and I see a Canary card. I'll tell you there is a card that concerns me, and I do want to hear thoughts on it. Moment of Normalcy. This card reads off the charts to me. Now, it does have Unique, which is a downside, but it is a 2-diff Infinity reset, either offensively or defensively, to printed speed or damage.
So, do you think that a card at Moment of Normalcy's power level is abnormal and is problematic on its, like, prima facie, on its face, just this is too strong to make a reset? Or do you think that it's some particular spell of the Infinity symbol that makes it noteworthy?
Yeah, I was going to say there's two different questions here, right?
Okay, so
one question is should a card shaped like this be Infinity? And is the rate of this particular swing at doing that too much? Because it feels like you're saying the latter.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the first thought to me is like, if this card, how do I word this? Certain symbols probably need a shot in the arm right now. Earth immediately comes to mind. Like and maybe this is a little harder to do in an attuned world.
It's a lot harder, dude. It's impossible to do in an attuned world.
It is kind of impossible to do in an attuned world, but I do look at it and I go, some symbols in terms of like this is being the main symbol you want to play on just don't feel great. Earth, like, I think just has Grog right now really going for it, now that Pony has pivoted to air. Broberg, what other Earth character's big right now?
Pony.
Pony?
Every Pony I've seen has been playing on air at this point. Now they no longer
all
have
two of them?
names. Yeah, all two of them are playing on air.
They're scared of Goblin Bolt Deviljin. They don't
Because-
like.
All right. We're okay. I'm gonna try to have it the Okada better than you percent of it because they're all sheep, Justin. That's why they're all playing on air.
Okay. Fine. I won't say Earth. How about something like has the evil symbol been on anybody's primary lately?
Ghidorah.
I guess Ghidorah, but now Ghidorah seems like it's playing more Void, and like it doesn't seem like it has a super compelling case.
Yeah, I mean, evil's evil and good are kind of not real symbols anymore. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, if you want to print a card in your Attack on Titan set that none of your Attack on Titan characters can play, then yes, you could put Evil Tune on it.
But the what I was trying to say is that if you tell me,
Infinity.
can this card be printed on a symbol? My answer is if this was on a symbol that you as the designers felt this symbol needs a shot in the arm.
Will it need a shot in the arm in 2 years?
Well, yeah, that's the balancing game. Is it may not need it in 2 years, maybe a different one will need the shot in the arm, and that is kind of how power creep starts to happen. Is they keep trying to make things better by increasing card quality. But if you told me that was the goal, I might be able to understand it. I have a hard time imagining Moment of Normalcy on the Infinity symbol because this is an incredibly powerful card that you are now saying the best symbols get to use. On top of every other symbol, of course.
So I think we're all in Shameless, but like Jeremy was in Shameless talking about this card at some point, and
I didn't see that. I'll need to take a look at that.
Yeah, and he said, look, and it was talking about the set broadly, but the context was this card.
Yeah.
Look, we lost You're So Obvious. We lost the Denki card that didn't see a lot of play, but was a foundation-based reset.
Short circuit, yeah.
Yeah, we're losing. We're going to lose Desperate Struggles and the 2/4 speed reset soon. Those were intended to be a cycle of everyone gets a reset. And
Sure.
he wanted to make sure that a replacement for that existed. And all this is obviously more powerful than all of those. But, we're in 2025. The power levels have gone up.
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have made it this strong, but like that doesn't mean they're not allowed to make a card that's this strong. I'm a little more conservative. That's just all that is. And so yeah, I'm certainly fine with it being Infinity. And if people cut some zero diffs from their deck to play this thing, then good. They've gotten better at deck building.
So yeah, the more I have played the game, the more I've been cutting zero diffs. Like the more I'm like, man, these cards actually like don't do anything for me. And they matter on turn 1 and like no other time they really feel like they matter. And even turn 1, if I just check a 5, it feels like it doesn't matter anyways. But I do want to say, let's kind of broaden this then. Should the Infinity symbol at all be or a thing you are considering? The fact you're giving something the infinity symbol when you're deciding the power level of a card, or do you think regardless of power level, any card could be on the infinity symbol and it'd be fine relatively?
So I think like this in so Moment of Normalcy and I forgot the name of Mikasa. I hate you already. Jesus Christ, I'll never remember the name of that card. Honestly, what was the other card you were just talking about?
The
The
action
action
I
Filled
don't
with
remember.
doubt.
Phil,
That
Filled
one.
with Doubt. Yeah. Yeah, it's a mealy mouth name too. Jesus.
yeah,
Anyway, well, both these cards are answer cards, right? Both these cards are floodgates and canaries, right? If people start playing for Moment of Normalcy, that's a sign that something's really weird in the metagame, and someone's playing some really degenerate speed and/or damage attacks that need resets, and somehow having one of these in play is the binary you win or lose condition. Um, they're also worse broadly than like the really good iterations of these cards, right? Like Moment of Normalcy is worse than a new number one. I think that's maybe particular to pro heroes, but broadly, I mean, 3 diff versus 2 diff is a little bit sideways, but Item
Certainly
Box,
worse than Eden Box. Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's worse than well. I
and
mean, it is
It
a
is.
worse effect than Idenbox. Um, Foundation versus Asset makes it more arguable, which is like worse to have slotted.
almost
in your
every
deck.
good foundation is almost exactly as good as being an asset. It's when it has a commit cost. Like Greater Goal would be
Sure.
a little bit worse as an asset, but like when you like new number one would be just as good as an asset, almost better because you can't stun it, right? Like
Yeah.
Item Box is better because it's an asset because you can't stun it.
I will say I will
You,
definitely
you
put
use it, you commit it every time, right?
and Zach kind of hit the nail on the head. I will definitely say this is better than new number one because it also resets damage. And the fact that like if someone invincible bodies you and you get to go great, now this is back to printed damage, or does anything to zero out the damage you move, like this basically says if you keep this up, Mirio's damage reset or zero out, or Reiner's is offline. I think that
But
makes it better, and it's a difficulty less.
Yeah, but you're gonna say this is that like plus or minus one speed is worth nothing? Like that you can just conclude that it's just better because it doesn't. The plus or minus one speed.
I think if Moment of Normalcy was just the speed reset, then I would say that like new number one and Moment Normalcy are sideways in power level because you're trading one difficulty for that one or minus one speed. And I think that would be a reasonable argument. I think the
I would
fact
always rather do that. I'd rather have my one difficulty on turn one and my one speed on turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 than my like level thing the whole game.
Barlow called Kevin bad and wrong. Guys, there are certain things even I don't have the hubris to do. I don't think I can call the world champion bad and wrong at the game.
If I'm being bad and wrong, that's cool.
I think this
yeah,
take
no,
is wrong.
I think I think all these are case by case. I think part of the picture of this is it's unique. They're making. We'll see if they follow through. They're ostensibly making a commitment not to print a bunch of cards like this.
Yeah.
And saying that we don't want people playing a bunch of cards like this in their decks, so we'll make this one infinity unique. And that's what we're going to have. People, if people want to have a reset in their deck, they have this.
I will.
And we
I
might
will,
print some like funny shaped ones, but there won't be anything like this.
Just
Works
straight
on
commit to do a
everything.
thing,
Yeah.
I will definitely say that is one thing to think about with Infinity. While I don't think power level necessarily needs to be considered with Infinity, because at the end of the day, while yes, it can slot into more decks, you still are restricted by the same number of cards in every deck. So I think like Infinity cards being good are fine and being powerful are fine. I do think, and this is already an issue in general attuned, and you could broaden this out into an attuned conversation really easily. But like printing too many of the same effect where the same deck can run it is very scary. The only reason my Smiling Time deck is any good, and I like it a lot, I think it's very good, but the only reason it is any good is because it sits there, it plays 4 Desperate Struggles, 4 Invincible Bodies, 4 Always Cool, and 2 to 3 Last Second Rescue, and goes, I can make sure that like 4 or 5 moves across the game come in for either printed speed and damage or 0 damage. And that is just exceptionally annoying to play against. I will tell you, I know people have been like, oh, of course, Like the smiling player hates Moment of Normalcy, hates an Infinity Reset. I think this card's almost better for smiling. Her reset boards is going to get even more complex and like multi-foundational than it already is. And you barrier shield me and I'm just going to reset it to 8 speed. Oh, that sounds like that's going to be obnoxious to play against. Like
Yeah, I think I got on a tangent from kind of getting too deep into should any card be infinity. Like this is at the very worst sideways for a bunch of things, and I do think that part of the reason that you make an infinity card is, as you say, it kind of you touched on one of the points that I wanted to make which was that there's only going to be one moment of normalcy, and they're not going to like make a dozen of these such that you can make a board that's moment of normalcy fire version, moment of normalcy death version,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, but to more directly respond to what you just said is that they also make this card because they think it's good for the game to have this card. They like
sure.
people navigating these complicated boards. They like people playing attacks with higher printed damage rather than saying, let me play an overpowered character and stack a bunch of damage on the cheapest attack I can find, because that's been the dominant strategy in an awful lot of metagames.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like I do think, in fairness to that, there was a period of the game when you go back to like AO or MHA like sets 2, 3, 4, 5, where I think you can argue it felt like foundations didn't matter a ton. There were some like release that were really crazy. A lot of the zeros were really crazy, but especially once you get to like sets 2, 3, 4, the foundations kind of felt like they were just things to be on your board that had incidentally decent effects you would use, but were mainly there to be things on your board. And it's clear they want now like boards to be, these are high impact things you need to have a strong way to play around and navigate around. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It just is definitely a thing.
Yeah, one interesting trend, like I definitely feel like they're very clearly making strong cards, like generally more than they more fearlessly than they have in the past at times. And also, but like they're kind of doing a thing that I feel like it's not in the conversation about power creep sometimes. If you take a better version of the previous card, then that's power creep. But if you kind of grow in one area and fall out in another area, maybe you can kind of have things cycle over each other and make a wheel, and that doesn't actually get taller over time. It just kind of different parts of it get accentuated different times, and the spams suck now. Is basically the thrust.
Yeah. I'm gonna be a grump. I don't know how much there is in design right now. Right, I feel like we have a lot of clear. You can tell that these sets are being lead designed by different people. Like you compare set to set, release to release, and different designers. They have the same playtest team, but different designers are going to have different interactions and ways that they interact with that playtest. Someone with the bona fides of Jeremy Ray is going to do a lot more pushing back on his ideas, right, than one of their newer designers is going to be, for instance. And Jeremy Ray, we know he likes to push the envelope. Right, this is not. We've seen Godzilla, we've seen Dark Tournament, we've seen AOT2, we've seen AOT3. And so, like, I mean, this looks like a Jeremy Ray set to me, He wants cards to be good.
And there's always an answer, which is if this gets too overwhelming, you can start hitting cards. There is one thing that was said in an article that I know Broberg and I don't know y'all's thoughts on it, but I know Broberg and I got annoyed at the community's response to it. Which it was something paraphrasing along the lines of, if we're never banning cards, we're not making the game interesting. And I 100% agree with that. Like, especially now that we have monthly ban lists, the fact that if a card's a problem, like, Aerial Gumble Devilgin became a problem, and in a month we addressed it. The fact that, like, I think the idea of, hey, let's push the envelope, let's test these sort of things. And we're going to talk about a few examples of these coming up, because I do kind of want to forecast what we're going to see. Let's push that envelope. And if it's a problem, we'll ban it. Or we'll hit cards. Or we'll print better answers to it. We've got ways we can address these things as they happen.
Yeah, I don't really doubt that they will. But I do think it's been a minute since we've seen them hit a high rarity card. Which doesn't mean they should do it for the sake of doing it, right? But I'm trying to remember. I don't know when the last time this happened was, but that is one minor. If they are actually just not willing to do that, then that's a little spooky. But I don't think they're really unwilling to do that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the most alarming high rarity?
Yeah,
card
like I
that-
don't even know what one. Like, there's been a lot of ones that got pitchforks, but haven't like really been serious.
I think the
like
closest
we're
people,
supposed to,
people
like,
were mad
probably-
about like Walk the Dog, but
there was a
like
Right.
period. I
How
think there was
goofy.
pre AOT. There was an era where Walk the Dog felt really bad. I think people have really simmered down on Walk the Dog in a post AOT world because we have a lot more stuff now that are on that level.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone in the main Discord about this, like I think yesterday or the day before or something, where like they were like, "Oh, we're afraid to hit ultra rare and secret rares." I'm like, I don't think that's the case. It's just a lot of the times the scarier cards that have needed to been hit are characters, challenger deck cards, or rares or lower.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the way our game works. Um, Characters almost always feel like the first ones that need to get touched if anything needs to get touched because you always have that thing. You know,
Right.
you don't always have the powerful you are unless you have a character that searches things or an attack that searches things. But you will always have that character. But speaking of the like, yes, I know technically, Kevin, there are exceptions where if someone steals your character, you don't have that character. Or
Well, no, I'm just thinking about like, I mean, think about like the World Championships finals. Like there were a whole lot of ultra and secret rares that were integral parts to those decks, right? Like Walmaria's Might is a
Oh,
card that could get banned in some alternate universe. Like Ravage's War is a card that could get banned in some alternate
I think we
universe.
talked a little bit on that first ban list after Worlds about like maybe they do hit Wall Maria to temper Krista a little bit.
No, nobody even wants to play Krista. I think
No,
you're
no.
wrong. But,
It is so crazy how like the two were well actually Hanji 2 has still seen play, but the second place Worlds deck that like also did it win nationals or get second in nationals?
Yeah, one
One.
nationals.
It
Yeah.
won nationals.
two different
And-
symbols, but a lot of the same concepts.
Is
right?
not substantially weaker post rotation. Like most of the cards that are critical to that still exist, and is just not seeing play.
Yeah, if I had been going to Albuquerque, I probably would have spent some amount of time trying to shop Krista over the past few weeks. So I'm certainly a little bit surprised.
I'm not
that-
smart enough to play Krista, and I'll openly admit that.
I
Travis
did.
is
Some, I
way
did some
more-
of it for our pre-worlds testing. I was like the designated. I'm going to play some Krista against people. Like I don't know. I certainly like the chaos list in any event.
Yeah.
It was cool. Yeah.
I think what Justin said kind of hits the nail on the head, though. I think there are a lot of people who look at Krista and they're like, I don't think I'm competent enough to pilot this, and I think that's why they're steering clear of it.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're right is a completely different conversation.
Or it's some level. It's kind of like how are you going to optimize your chances to win a tournament, right? Are you going to take the most challenging deck in the room and try to like dive in deep with that, or are you going to take a deck that's more comfortable and more familiar and more easy for you to play,
Right.
and throw your hat in the ring or whatever?
Right. Like, I think Krista is better than Godzilla, but if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go Godzilla because I played that deck so much more.
Yeah, or even just like what specific problem are you solving in the metagame by playing this character? Is Chris's matchup into Nick Reagan incredible or something? I can't imagine it's terribly great.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's probably part of it too, right? Nick Reagan's probably pretty spooky for.
I think Krista always works at her best when she's like
He should be spooky for Mitch now too, right? Minus VME.
in a format that's like turn 3, turn 4, etc. Feeling like it's gonna lean. I think Krista feels way better. I think in turn 2 metas, she can feel like a little too slow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like they invented
Yeah,
Krista for like uneroded mimic metagame, right? And Godzilla, like trying to turn two
True.
people at City Rampage, and they said,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna play a Chaos Mirror. We're gonna be a 6 hand size with a big button, 4 runaways.
Okay, but Kevin, the turn 2 Godzilla decks were bad, and I say that as a person who took it to EU.
Yeah, but like Birdholt was good.
True. I'll give you Bird. I'll give you Bird too. Anyways, I do want to make sure that we are moving on good pace.
Yeah, actually talk about other cards.
And we wanted to talk a little bit because we've talked a little bit about how Jeremy Ray pushes the envelope, AOT's pushing the envelope, and boy is the envelope being pushed this set. There are some cards that are a little questionable, and I've put up a few that I want to talk about. The first one that is probably the least egregious, and this is maybe where I'm doing a little bit of vamping about forecheck attacks. I cannot believe that this UR 9 Titans throughout the ages was not previewed anywhere, and I just saw it get ripped from a set. Oh my god, this card is good. And it kind of gets into like, first of all,
You James, you missed an opportunity. I would have popped off out of my seat. I would have flipped I would have flipped my desk over, popping off if I saw this card on stream. Like,
Oh.
I'm just telling you, you miss out. You miss out.
Oh no, I know this card is so cracked. Like first of all, first in hands. For those of you who don't know the card, first in hands you commit, lose 3 stamina. It has 6 stamina. Double this Titan attacks, speed, or damage. All of the Titan attacks are like minimum 6 speed and 6 damage. So this says you're converting one move to anywhere in the range of 12 to 20 speed and 12 to 20 damage. Just for having it out and playing it. Now, it is a 4-diff backup, but its defensive ability, I think a lot of people are going to gloss over, but is also incredibly strong. Response commit, lose 2 stamina. After an attack is played, -4 damage. So you get to do that at least 3 times. So if you know Beast Titan, if you see Tan's Beast Titan deck, which has done pretty well in a lot of playtesting stuff, one of the things that makes that deck really good is it can twice do -3 damage with Titan under orders, and that gives it a lot more survivability than you would think. This is -4 damage 3 times. And it's at response speed, which the funny thing about being response speed is it means it plays against itself insanely well, because you like -4 damage a Titan attack, so it's now only 4 damage. If they try to double their own Titan attack now, it's now only coming in back for 8. Tam and I were playing this on stream, and we just kind of stared at each other every time we played Titan attacks, because the second one of us reset the damage, or lower the damage, the other couldn't double it and make it valuable. I think this card's kind of just nuts. I don't know what you guys think of it, but it's nuts to me.
Yeah, I drew the analogy that I think this is, and this is a spicy take that's, half completely, like, objectively false, but, like, I think this card is better than Knots Flask. Knots Flask being 1 diff. Lives in a kind of similar space, and this card is just flatly stronger than a card I played 4 of to win a regional last year.
I mean, it's a little bit apples to oranges, but I think you are, like, in a deck that can use these abilities, they're definitely better than Knots Flask.
Yeah, it's worth noting that if you use the response more than once, you don't get the enhance anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've committed to the damage reduction mode of it.
Unless you play Caduceus.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting shape of a backup. It is a backup that you can, obviously if Hanjwon decides she wants this to be the character's text, then fine. But outside of that, it's a backup that you could certainly imagine yourself attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this case, you don't really mind if you only deal it 2 or 3 damage, right? That's enough to if it -4 something and you deal 2 to 3 of it, that's fine.
Yeah,
it's also a backup you could see yourself ignoring, right? If you're like, well, I'm just
my number's bigger, yeah.
Yeah, -4 is not enough to stop me. You can have multiple of these. You can have a damage reduction critical mass going on, which is a whole other, but that's not this card's fault explicitly.
Right.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, so I've been playtesting. If you watched the grind last week, and I'll probably do it again tomorrow at least once. I've been playtesting a few Hanji 1 builds that use this. For one, the fact that Hanji 1 builds this out of the deck is absolutely insane. I keep saying that Hanji 1 probably got the single biggest power bump I have ever seen a character get from a set that is not direct support for them. Like, this card...
Well, yeah, character went from blank to having text.
I know, the character went from the blank 4 dips to one of the craziest things you could possibly print. But I think, like, I know, Tim, you hate DR World. The reason I wanted to bring up this card is this proposes, like, a very scary backup prison-style deck, because you've got 9 Titans for -4 damage, you've got Titan Under Orders for -3 damage, you've got Loyalty of a Friend, which is a foundation that commits for -1 damage for every backup you have, and you've got Hitch now on fire, which is repeatable, minus upwards of 5 damage. The Hanji 1 decks I've been testing, I have some, because they just run 4 of each of those, that I can easily reach a board state by like turn 3 that says -20 plus damage on board.
You really think I'm leaving home with that Animus shot?
You know what, that's fair. These are the most Animus shot.
You really think like Animus Shot was already printed for me. It's Bloody Funeral. Now it's other
Yep.
text is going to matter?
Hey, I will say that's a cool thing about 9 Titans. You're only going to get to rip one backup with Animus Shot, because unless you've already outed their 9 Titans, because they're going to set that thing to 0 damage so quickly.
1 damage. It's 5.
It's 5 damage? Yeah. Oh, never mind. It's nuts.
Thank God.
Thank God. No, actually, thank God. Oh man.
You know, like I think the Nine Titans. I didn't realize until this just now. 2 of the 3 Aarons have static damage bumps that you can double with this. You know, Aaron Yeager Usurper flips, plays some 10 for damage attack. That's a 26 now coming at your dome. Or just Jaw Titan attacks on 6 difficulty that I'm playing at the end of a string. That's 18 all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So sick. So sick.
Yeah, anybody who can response speed or static speed pump a Titan attack that already could justify running those, this does that much more for. Like Hanji herself, +2 speed when you commit a backup. That's static speed.
True.
She now makes so this now makes that +4 speed basically. Yeah, this card is really good. It is probably the least egregious of the ones we're going to talk about because it is the least quote-unquote insertable in decks. I mean, the -4 damage might be good enough to consider in decks that aren't running Titans, but it's mostly going to be a Titan-specific card.
Yeah, so like you're the prosecutor of the infinity symbol tonight. Do you think that there's anything wrong with this card having infinity? Should this have had a normal symbol?
I think, given you gave most of the Titan attacks infinity,
Yeah.
it would feel really weird to not give it to this. Like there is a world where you say, hey, we don't want the death symbol to do a 7 mid for 26 that blows up one, commits one, and flips a ready on turn 2.
You just need death in whatever symbol the attuned one is, though. Like, you don't get to say that.
Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is, like, with the way attuned works, and this is something that kind of gets us a little bit back to infinity. With the way attuned works, one of the main reasons you didn't do infinity was, like, what if these 2 cards combo together? Is that going to be a problem? That's now always going to be a problem you have to consider. Like, that's just a thing that exists no matter your symbol combo now.
You're just embracing that's going to be a part of your game.
And so if you embrace it, that's part of your
if
game.
It's a problem, you're willing to ban it, right? Like,
yeah. And with that in mind, giving this infinity probably seems fine.
But yeah, I'm kind of like, I think in another set, like if this was a spell-themed critical role card, I think I would have liked it to have a symbol.
Yeah.
But I think Titans have an infinity theme going on is kind of a sufficient reason to give an infinity, I think.
Yeah, I think
also, that the part of the idea is that like there's a part of a Titans themes is that a lot of these cards have infinity. I'm not going to mention Magic. But this is just like in that vein. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Like the thing I have to be mad about here is, and mad, I use that with heavy quotations.
Yeah,
it's not the infinity symbol, it's the fact that this thing's not unique. That's like the only thing I'm mad about.
Oh my god. The fact that like Hanji builds one in for free, then can play one as her first card if she checks a 3, commit this one, feels so nice.
You're probably not checking 3s though because you're playing 4 checks.
No, you're playing.
This is it's such a flavor win because like if you just try to ignore, like your opponent stacks up 4 of these and you try to like ignore it and run through it, like you better be freaking cracked to do that.
Right.
Or alternatively, you should just like try to chew through them and kill them and fight your opponent's backups, just like the Battle of Heaven and Earth. Like, oh, it's so cool.
But I do love me a good flavor win. But this is probably the least egregious of the ones we're going to talk about, and the one that's breaking the rules the least. Here's a really interesting one. Colossal Confrontation. Now, this was an SR that was leaked in Gamma. So, like, we've kind of known about it even before it was revealed.
Yeah, so this is an Order Attune card, right? So we're talking about like the rules, right?
Order Attune, 9/4, 7 high for 10, Blitz, Ruin 3, build one from your hand face down, and then find any card in your deck and add it to your hand. Now, one of the things I was going to kind of talk about with a lot of these cards is I'm going to call these, for lack of a better word, rule breaking or convention breaking cards, maybe better. Breaking the conventions of our game. One of the big conventions in our game is tutors are incredibly few and far between. If you look at the history, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, when you look at the history of UFS, The only other can find any card without a restriction or a goal that must be met first is Let's Party. Am I missing any besides Let's Party? At least in Jasco
It's
era?
like Warp Gate Portal, but
Well,
Yeah,
anything.
Warp Gate
Like, I
Portal's
mean,
awfully
literally
similar.
any card in your deck. Because Warp Gate Portal's only attacks.
sure.
I
What
think
did
it's
the
just Let's
Wild Wild Pussycat do? What was her requirement?
Oh, the
It was a
character,
once per
like
game.
she had a character that could do it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
she did
yeah.
have the
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
So it was a once per game.
But that's her
so-
thing. Like that's the character's
Sure.
thing, and the character
Sure,
sucked
sure, sure.
otherwise.
Right.
Like Let's Party was a one check, that did this, and like Warp Gate Portal.
Yeah, I mean, you put a bunch of conditions on it, so I'm kind of like struggling with the conditions. When you like unlimited searching your deck type stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, this is a 9-def, and I can.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. My point is that it is breaking a convention. Like Warp Gate Portal is the closest analog to this, and yes, it could find anything. It was a one check, or it could find any attack. It was a one check, and you had to play the attack. You couldn't add it to your hand and store it for later. This card does something that's not common in our game. We don't play tutors. We don't. Coin Must Task, like the insane thing that Mitchell Cimino's character got to do was it got to really easily take advantage of the form on Coin Must Task. I say really easy. Much more easily take advantage of the form of Coin
Yes.
Must Task. Because of its ability to remove the stuff that he put in Momentum, he puts one in Momentum, removes it, he gets to have a field day. And his deck was running like 14 attacks to take advantage of that. What do you guys think about the design space? Do you think the convention of, I don't want this game to have tutors, is like a thing that is valuable to hold?
So I think in universes, like kind of the convention is that if you want to make a card that gives you this sort of level of ultimate card selection, you just make it a graveyard tutor instead. You make it a regrowth.
Yes.
You make Urmeshi's Perseverance, which they literally, if you played a Yu Hakusho pre-release or sealed event with pre-release packs, everyone got a copy of that. I thought that was actually a great idea for limited play in University. Yeah. It's Urmeshi's Perseverance. Way back in set one, there was like set one of Street Fighter, there was Unorthodox Style and Yoga Roundhouse Kick. Were kind of twin. If you get momentum, that lets you get any card in your graveyard, and your discard pile fills up as you make control checks. So you get to a mid game, half the cards in your deck or so will be in your discard pile, or will be in some zone that can eventually move to your discard pile, and then you can go fetch. And kind of this is great because then you don't have to shuffle your deck afterward, and so you just
Yeah.
there's a little bit of time.
I was wondering like I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like I don't like there's a little bit of yes, tutoring your deck is stronger on 2, and so if we want to make a tutor, just make it 2. It's not that we don't want tutoring effects in the game. It's that like tutoring the discard pile is a very easy just do this instead, because you don't have to worry about on turn 2, and you don't have to deal with shuffling your deck afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just cleaner, and like it's not strictly because like, oh my god, tutoring your deck is taboo. It's just because like it's not though there's no benefit to doing it design wise over doing it to your discard pile, aside from just to like make a card look impressive because it's different.
Sure.
Yeah, and if we want to talk to kind of the Magic design space, in Magic, you see every card that comes off your deck almost invariably will go through your hand first. You don't have control checks in Magic, and you see many fewer cards over the course of the game. If a card's in the midway point of your deck, which half your cards are or below, you often won't see that card in the course of the game. You won't get that deep before the game's over after turn 12 or whatever. And so a tutor in Magic means you can play a 1x and be, it's just an extra copy of whatever you're looking for. But if you have some 1x tutor piece, actually tutors in UFS universes are worse than they are in Magic because you can just check your one of tutor targets. Like this is a big thing with Quenva's task of when you solve that quest, it says like go get every copy of your cards except the ones that are already not in your deck. So if you play a 4 of, like let me go search for all my Walk the Dogs, you'll only have 2 a lot of the time. You will almost never get all 4 copies of 2 cards. So I think it's just it's a surprising decision. I'm surprised to see it, but it's not. I think it's I don't know.
Yeah, like a lot of people flipped out when they saw Colossal Confrontation. I was just like, okay, they made a flashy 9/4. This is, is this that much better than Unexpected Consequences? Like,
yeah,
in terms of how directly it's going to win you the game.
Yeah, and I kind of lost the thread just to butt in again real quick. In Magic, they have 2-card infinites. You can win the game with 2 cards in a
Yeah.
lot of formats.
Right.
We don't make those in universes.
Sure.
Sure.
Those are not acceptable because you can assemble them so much faster, so much easier because you get so much more card velocity. So just the tuning of that has to be much lower, and so the ceiling of how good any 2-card combo can be is already lowered by just the design, the shape of the game.
Sure.
I
And so
do
like there's less reward for this, I
I
think.
do think it's interesting you compared a lot of graveyard recursion. I think graveyard conversion on the surface is a fair comparison because yes, once you get to a mid-game state, if you're running 4 of a card, the odds that one is in your discard is exceptionally high. I mean, it's why Tokoyami, like people, you say, oh, like at the very beginning, people were thinking, oh, is he a casino character? Because what if he doesn't find a copy by turn 2? Turns out when you're milling, like, what was it, 5 cards plus you did your turn 1, the chance that you find at least one Summon Dark Shadow is exceptionally high. And so, like, yeah, I agree that, like, if for 4 ofs, it feels almost the same. I do think an interesting difference with this card is when you have cards that are like a 2 of or a 1 of, this deck card finds those way more easily because if you're through half your deck, especially for 2 of, there's a 25% chance that one of them hasn't hit your discard, or neither of them has hit your discard. And so like there's a decent odds you still wouldn't
There's
find
a
that by the
25%
mid-game
chance they both hit your discard.
It is
So,
true. There is a
you
25%
know.
chance they both hit your discard. I know where I'm looking at this card. I look at it and go, I can run a ton of like 1 of actions that cover me for a lot of situations. Like if I'm playing this in like a Titan 4-check deck, I go grab Coinma's Task if I want to make sure they can't barrier shield me or things like that. And that feels like that might be a little concerning to me. I don't mind necessarily the design space. It's better than some of the ones that I think we're going to get to because I don't think this card is not going to win the game on its own. By definition, it's only going to help you as much as the next card you find might help you. And that might help you a lot, but it's not going to win the game on its own.
Right.
And you committed 4 or 5 foundations to do this. Like,
yeah. You committed 4 to 5 and then you rebuilt 1 from your hand. So,
sure.
You know, it's
And then you get
basically
one
an
to
8
end
diff.
turn.
You're not turn 2ing anyone with this. Like, this is
Sure.
this is like, and at least for the time being, sweeping daggers exists, so this has to be in sideboards.
Yeah, it is. This is the because I've had the argument with a lot of people because they go, why would you play X 4-check deck in a world of sweeping daggers? And the answer is most of the 4-checks don't care that much if they get sweeping daggered. Like they don't feel good, but they're not awful because at the end of the day, a lot of them are relying on high stats. This one is kind of relying on high stats, but it also has an effect that is so strong.
I was like, this card does a lot more than just have good stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This card is doing so much that if your opponent gets these effects on a 4, especially because you usually have a lot of face downs in a lot of Titan decks because that's how we ramp, the chance you lose the game on the spot goes up exponentially. I literally built a peak deck that's so much fun, and I'm like, I can't play this beyond locals if Swaggers exists because I will die.
Yeah.
Hey,
The
you
only
just
thing
gotta
about the
4x
card,
your 4x your Mikasa card.
right.
Phil, yeah, there you go.
What's your problem?
Or
But,
extra press X to doubt.
I think the only thing that really bothers me with this card, and like I'm fine with it tutoring, for what it's worth. I just think it does a lot, and that's the only reason I have any cause for concern with it. Because it's not only good stats, it ruins 3, which might not mean anything, but sometimes it does. It builds a card from your hand immediately. It becomes a foundation at the end of turn. It tutors any card out of your deck, and on to top all that off, it checks a 4 and is a +1 mid block with Breaker 1. It does a lot of things.
Good.
No,
It's a 9 diff secret rare.
Sure.
I 100% agree. And I do want to give quick mention to its backside. Like, its backside is not nothing.
It's not terrible, yeah.
First form, flip any foundation to target commit a rival foundation. In the, like, 4-check decks, finding targeted commits to stop their reset foundations is, like, a big deal. It's why we, like, will 4x League Invitation in those decks, because it's just that good to target commit something. So the fact this does in first form, probably pretty good as well.
I will say I'm grateful that we've talked about this card because I think I have a much clearer picture of what it is in my head now.
Yeah.
And the analogy to Let's Party I think is apt because one thing this card does that if you just say, oh, it's demonic tutor, well, it puts you down 2 cards in hand. It costs 2 cards in hand to resolve this.
Mhm.
right? It gives you one back, and obviously it flips and it's an attack, and that's all valuable and stuff. But just in terms of blunt card quality, it's like it gives you less card. It gives you a similar card quality to a card like high engine kick back in
Sure.
Jet One. It's not a reciprocal, so that actually goes up on cards or kind of replaces itself, so to speak. Um, I
Yeah,
think a lot of if the Ruin 3 isn't doing anything, I think this card actively isn't that good.
Yeah, yeah.
I
How
think
good is
the I think
your
it's
draw set? Like it levels out your draw sets, right? If you're trying to kill him this turn, you have a million foundations in play. It makes it so that you can find a big attack string or whatever.
yeah, I think it is. I think it is pretty good in the 4-check package, even when the ruin is not off, because you're usually playing a character that makes moves faster in those symbols. Not always, like a Hanji can still be played just to make sure they connect. And if you can make it connect, it also is just 10 damage swinging at someone. That's a lot of damage.
Right. In the deck that wants to play this as a 4 of easily, it's not that hard to pass a 9.
No.
And well, I think of Ravages of War too as another natural comparison. If you say, well, on the balance, how good is tutoring one card? Or like what range of possible scenarios can we be in where Ravages of War puts you in a like winning, like okay, it's easy for me to see the path to victory this game versus tutoring my deck and finding the perfect card. Like maybe if I can like Quenvas their Barrier Shield or something, but like just trying to hammer people with 9 diffs is really freaking hard. There's a million ways it can go wrong.
Sure.
And if you're really doing it, like you're going all in to try to kill them, that's a very scary thing to do. It's like I hope you can cover all the bases.
Yeah, if someone uses this to win the game on turn 5 because they have a million foundations, good.
Yeah, at least we're done with that game now. Yeah.
There are 2 more. I want to make sure we hit all of them. So there are 2 more I want to talk about that really came up. First, let's talk about one that has shown up a few times in conversations. The other SR that people are really scared of, Falling Titans, another Gamma leak, and it looks very familiar to a certain card that got banned in Retro, or Old Standard, because it actually got banned, I think, before MHA ever became a thing. Falling Titans is a 6-diff shift attack that is response, sacrifice a backup. After this attack responds, or resolves, add this card to your hand. And it's a 5 high for 6. Did either of you play Shield Big Bang at any point?
I have played Shield
Or any
Big
3 of
Bang.
you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a card.
This card
Not actually.
looks scarily close to Shield Big Bang. Now, before we start talking about this card itself, because that's the comparison made, let's make sure the differences are on the table. It's a 6-diff, not a 5-diff. The quality of backups is arguably not as good as the quality of assets at the time of Old Standard. And so, like, those are weaker elements. But Mark Tyner won Worlds with a either 6 or 8 attack deck that included 4 Shield Big Bang and a couple of other ways. Like, I think it was Discus as like a block.
There's a
It
couple
was
Omni blocks.
functionally a 4-attack deck. Yes.
Yeah.
Its offense was only copies of Shield Big Bang.
Yeah. It's pretty scary that we're building something close to it. And before we get into kind of card itself, you should know its backup side. When it shifts, it builds down as a foundation that adds this card to your hand for cost. Choose a backup, it gains 10 stamina. The choosing backup gains 10 stamina can matter, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. The big thing here is it means if they out the Falling Titans in a way that does not get rid of its shift ability, which there are ways to obviously do that, but if it does not get rid of its shift ability, it goes into your stage and you can pick it up and just do it again next turn.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, what are you scared to see a card like this printed?
I would not have, right? I would not have printed this. I'm
Right.
You know, but I'm a little more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
The key difference between assets and backups is you're allowed to attack the backups. And if they're playing a lot of cheap backups, they don't have a whole lot of health. You can just start trying to plunk them down and and if your deck like uses momentum to win the game, then all the momentum you get off of killing off the backups will eventually pay you out. Secondly, at the time of the Shield Big Bang deck, it very notably played a particular foundation interaction that wasn't on anybody's radar, that
Arguably didn't work.
clearly worked. A lot of people did not feel like it should work. But in any event, it trumped what people were doing to stop the loop. So people came prepared for the Shield Big Bang deck, and it didn't matter because their preparations were outdone by this weird card that had never seen play. So that's part of what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, back then, if someone did anything with a 4-attack deck that wasn't named Heidi, it got banned on site. And we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? The current team is more okay with letting stuff like this out there and seeing what happens.
Absolutely. I am scared to see. So I did not get to play in Shield Big Bang meta. I think I was technically playing the game, but on like exclusively a locals level at that point. And I had heard the horrors of what that deck was doing. I don't like 4-attack decks. I just don't. And I think it's one thing when it's like a Deku that feels like it is so revolved around the one punch, and like it feels like you have to play so many ways to address it, and you can't do it on turn 2. You cannot one punch someone on Deku on turn 2. The reason this card scares me in a way the other 4-attack or 8-attack decks we've seen doesn't is because if you get a good enough build and you check enough 5s, in a character like Hanji 1 that can commit the backups, you can just keep picking this up and kill them on turn 2, theoretically. Or you can, after they try to play one of their answers, then swap back into building and just try again on a next turn. That scares me way more than most one-punch decks have.
I don't think anyone's going to die on 2 to this. Like, genuinely, I would be surprised to hear a single report of that.
Really?
Yeah. It's a 6 diff, dude. It does 6 damage.
Yeah, in
Like,
Hanji 1... Hold on. In Hanji 1, this is a 5 diff. Because in Hanji 1, you are committing whatever backup you are about to blow up.
So it's a 6 diff because you check a 5 and you have to commit a resource, right?
A resource you're going to pop already, yes.
Yeah, and Hanji gets like 1 resource, and then like that's even say it's Hanji player 2 trying to kill him on turn 2, trying to backswing on 2.
Yeah.
So they start with 6 cards.
Yeah.
Plus a resource in play, plus they draw a bonus card for player 2.
Yeah.
They build all 7 of them. They have now 8 resources.
Yeah.
Deal my life total and damage through my blocks and or interaction.
So someone just asked, did I pull this off last Friday on stream? I kind of did pull it off last Friday on stream on turn 2. The problem is it is unclear because I got through about 3 iterations of it occurring, and then Chris rage quit on me. Before I had the potential, if I checked 5s, to resolve it another 3 times. I think I could check 1, 3 and be fine. It was unclear if I would have checked enough 3s at that point, because Chris got really mad playing against this, which I can't blame him for. It does not feel good to lose to this card.
What was he playing?
He was playing Deku 6, and his Deku 6 did not have Nonagon. And I had gone first, so he hadn't transformed yet.
You killed him on 2 when he rage quit. It wasn't 3.
It would,
just need
if
to
I had
play-
checked 5s, it would have been on 2, which we don't know if I would have checked 5s or not because he got really mad midway.
Yeah, because
Nope.
it's if you're playing this thing 6 times, that's 36 damage, so they have to block twice to not die.
So
and
yeah,
in Hanji, it's going to come in as a 7 high 7. Or
yeah,
sorry.
or 7 high 6, yes. And the
Yeah.
other thing to keep in mind with this is that like you mentioned that you can have a max. Let's say you go first, you can build out your whole stage because you're only playing 8 attacks. The chance that you can do that is pretty good because you have an extra foundation like your Ymir, or you're going second. Let's say you build 5 backups.
Or Hanji player 1 gets the foundation, gets the backwind play, right? Like that has control check on turn 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's say you build all 6 cards in your hand, which is a pretty lucky hand, but it's not unreasonable. And
it gets more lucky with a 4-attack deck, granted.
And yeah, 5 of them are backups because you are playing like the 10 of Jaeger follower and the 10 of Marleyan warrior, so you have like 30 backups in your deck. A thing that can reasonably happen. You can now, if you check straight 5s, play this 7 times. And if you check 1 3, you can still play it 7 times. You have to check 2 3s and not be able to play it 7 times. And at any point, you can just kind of stop. If they breaker you, if they do something else, you can go, great, I'm just going to build all my defense now. Still try to kill me. That is the kind of deck that scares me with this.
So yeah, I could be mistaken that this is that like the linear all in, no, like 4 attacks. That deck is actually that deck could be good enough, and I could be mistaken about that.
Sure.
You did say a minute ago that, correct me if I'm wrong, there was something along the lines of you don't have to commit to this as much as you have to commit to a one punch deck, as like one punch Deku.
In terms of one punch Deku has to play more answers, I think, in his foundation lineup, and he has to get longer in the game before he has the resources to do it.
One punch Deku is certainly slower, yes. Okay, so you have to commit your whole deck to all these backups, but once you commit your whole deck to it, then you can actually be fast.
Yeah, and a lot of those backups
okay.
just do generally good defensive things, like the Titans Under Orders, the Hitches, all of those are just generally strong defensively.
Sure.
And they're immune to stun hate, like, so that's pretty good too.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not so much as scared of this card as I am concerned about the negative play experience that it can bring.
Yeah.
Like you were just saying against Chris.
You are the worst human being of your locals if you take this to your locals. Like, this deck...
You're not.
Broberg, I don't know.
If you're like an enlightened despot net decking this thing, and you're like the best player at your locals, and you show up and just like try to bully everyone out of the room with your 4-attack deck, like, yeah, that's kind of scummy, and you should probably like have some more like respect for the community. But if you're just like a Timmy building this, like, you're gonna say little Timmy's the worst person on the earth?
Sorry, if you are a good player and you're playing this at your locals, if you're torturing the newer players at your locals,
if you're watching this cast, sure, but like, I don't know. I think like feeling guilt for bullying Jeff for showing up with Devil Jin too much a couple weeks ago.
Hey, if you're a little Timmy in
frustration.
If you're a little Timmy in the chat and you want to play this deck, raise your hand, please.
Why should we shame people for playing dope shit?
This is not dope, dude. What? Sorry. We're gonna get into like me and Broberg arguing for the next 30 minutes if we keep.
Like, we're gonna get. I mean, you want to argue about what makes a positive play experience? I built a cool deck that's different than your deck, and it worked. That's bad.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, you're laughing because you realize you're wrong.
It's not because I realize I'm. Hold on, we are gonna go into war because I'm trying to keep us semi on track. The answer is no. It is not cool because it's okay. Let me actually articulate my point. I do not think it is insanely cool when the deck feels like it is doing the exact same thing every single game. And I know people in chat are going to be like, "You play Smiling Titan though," but
it's already there.
Like, not escalating my nuts. Thank you. I think the fact that this deck feels like it's just going to have a bunch of turn 2, turn 3, turn 4s, where it's just, oh great, I just do this over and over and over and over again. And unlike the Deku, where it feels like I get to play a much better mini game of can I kill him before then or find enough outs before then, I don't think you're going to get that as much with this card. So I think this card kind of is miserable to play against.
So like, if you are a good player and you show up to your locals and you know little Timmy is with this and you can't find a way to have a good game against that, I would say a good game in the sense of like a satisfying intellectual battle of wits, but like you can't find a way to beat little Timmy with his terrible Falling Titans deck, that's kind of on you, because like, press X to doubt, dude. Like, the tools are there.
About the little Timmy showing up with this deck. The little Timmy can't afford 4 Falling Titans. I'm worried about the actually good player who shows up with this deck.
So are you worried on behalf of the kids who are brewing out of their backpack, or are you worried on behalf of yourself?
Oh, not myself. No.
Okay.
That requires me to like consistently make it to locals, and my job does not. I'm busy. But I am worried about the hypothetical of like, actually, I'm worried about the hypothetical of like, because I've seen this with locals and I've seen this with my locals where people want to bring the fun, interesting decks that have an okay matchup because they just play the game okay.
Dude, I don't know any consistent way to understand what you just said, except I want my locals to show up with bad decks and still have a good time, even though their decks suck. Even though they don't know what they're doing, even though they're building inconsistent piles. And I just don't understand any other way to interpret that is consistent with, here's a dope Falling Titans deck that looks different than normal decks.
So
And like, yes, if this deck is overpowered, if this deck is problematic, if this deck is winning too many tournaments, if this deck has bad vibes, then oh yeah, like, that's a problem. That's bad. If people find this deck too easily, that's bad.
okay. So I will say two things about this, and then I do think we probably got to move on before Tim
We got
and
one more
Will
topic we
murder
want to
us.
hit.
You and I could argue this for like 2 hours if we wanted to. The two things I want to say, one, I think one thing that hasn't gotten mentioned is like what does this attack end up doing as like an alt win con, first of all. Like I do also worry a little bit about this in terms of like, hey, this is like a good 4-check attack deck and like a 4-check Titan deck that just, if at any point the rival doesn't plan an answer for this, I can just pivot into this, especially because it can be picked up with Beast Titan. And that scares me a little bit. In addition, I do think I think it is something to say that this One Punch deck, the difference between it and a lot of others is that it is not going to feel like it is playing an interesting game a large percent of the time. And you can call that subjective. You can call that like an opinion. And it is. Like it factually is. But I think like I'm going to sit across from my opponent who's playing this deck. Or my opponents who, because I have a lot of locals who are wanting to play, yes, more casual decks. You could call it, yes, they're showing up with bad decks. But they're not wanting to sit there and like, I need to run 4 filled with down on my sideboard to make sure I beat the Falling Titans deck and have the out. They don't want to sit there and really metagame their locals. And I'm going to go, great, on turn, did you kill me on turn 2? No, on turn 3 I play this 6 times. Oh, you didn't kill me again? On turn 3 I play 6 times. And I think that is a concern for a locals experience. I think that can be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think like my estimate. I mean, how often are you going to draw this card by turn 3? Like, will you ever miss? Will you ever, if you're holding blocks?
I think like Justin is coming out. You used the term one-sided conversation earlier. Justin is coming at this from the perspective where 90% of the games with this deck are going to be one-sided conversation.
Yeah.
If people aren't expressly taking against it, Kevin just doesn't believe that that's true. And so, like, that's why there's an impasse here.
Yeah, and
I think that people should be permitted to play bad decks, and if they play a bad deck and they have a one-sided game, that's kind of like there is a level of not patrimony, like a level of paternalism that we should have to protect them from playing those bad games. We should take away the really degenerate bad decks from the toxic decks from the metagame. But I don't like. As a matter of like, should we shame people for playing toxic decks? Should we shame people for playing decks that are like that seems indistinguishable from me? Then should we play decks that are different than the correct shape of a deck? And obviously, we should have more than one shape of a deck. Like there shouldn't be one correct way to play the game.
I agree with you there.
And
I just
so what makes Falling Titans what's the difference between Falling Titans and a damage reduction wall deck with 4 checks?
Difference is that okay, so the difference.
Like I how many one-sided conversations do you think you had in Atlanta playing this Falling Titan? How many of your opponents were just like, no chance? 3?
2 to 3, I would say. There are 2 matches definitely, and there's like 1 match that's like a
whole matches. Like I'm at games. Like
if it's games, it's like 4 probably.
Only 4.
4, maybe 5. That I felt like were genuinely like one-sided from the, because there's like one side, because I really think about it more of like I sit down, because I think it's one thing when you just get a one-sided conversation because someone gets lucky and like builds really well turn 1, turn 2 is able to play 2 8 diffs and kills you, or the pony draws the nuts hand and plays 15 attacks and kills you on 2. I think that's one thing. I think I care about matches more because when I sit down and go, we could have played this matchup 90 times and 80 of those times I lose the game on 2 or 3. That's where I end up feeling like it's a real one-sided thing. And I'm worried that Falling Titans is an oppressive enough card that it's going to do that.
Well, so I mean, for me, like I think having people sun run you is part of the game. And I think that we're playing a gambling card game because we want to be like foreclosing on the possibility of someone getting sunrun is a very extreme pushing of that paternalism idea of that we should have the right way to play and that games should be like that. And like L5R did that. L5R games took forever and were incredibly skill intensive. Like the better player won so much in L5R. We're not playing L5R here. We're playing the gamble card game where you can summon someone, you can be player one and just like you can turn to them, or you can get like hit them for 20 on 2 and 10 more is coming on 3. They know it for sure. They can't possibly backswing you, right? Like that's a one-sided game. Well, I mean, you could call it a one-sided game if you want to. It's kind of a how you want to draw that line.
I think
But
I do
they get
agree.
dominated, right?
I do agree with Will, which is like I think it is and Will, you can actually state your opinion here.
I was just responding to chat, but like I said, I'm cool with this card as long as we address it as soon as possible if it does end up being a problem.
Yeah.
Like it's allowed to exist. It's allowed to let us experiment with it. I just have pause for concern because it's Shield Big Bang shaped.
Now
as long as we deal with it, if it's a problem, no problem.
And I think that's fair. Now that we've had a 20-minute argument on this card, which was going to happen to at least one of these cards, there's one card that I wanted to say for last because it got the most ire I saw when it was revealed. I mean, I saw people going, UVS Games is stupid for printing this card, levels of toxicity.
Unyielding
Unyielding
the one I thought you were going to pull up.
Unyielding Destruction. It is a 5-diff infinity. Blitz. Each player chooses 4 foundations. They sacrifice the rest of them. It's a 2 mid for 6, doesn't come in for many stats, but it resets the boards to 4 on a 5-diff.
Hell yeah.
This card's fine.
Okay.
It's annoying.
So fucked up.
I think I agree with what I'm going to echo Tam here, and I want to give credit because it was one of the things I heard him say when they were talking about this on their Infinity conversation, which is this card is either fine and will do next to nothing, or it will be so broken in some deck it will feel like it needs to immediately be banned. And that is kind of where I sit with this, because it is a 2 mid for 6, it resets both. You're going to have to figure out how to kill on 4 foundations after this point if you are doing it. Or you're going to have to be ready on the next turn to kill on 4 foundations if it's later in a string. Like, there is a lot to say with this card in that regard. But I get a little concerned when I think about the fact that we've printed a lot of characters that want really wide stages that aren't foundations. I look at this in Mimic, who gets to pick this up and gets to turn his assets into foundations. I look at this at a little less so Tarian now because, you know, he lost VME, but still.
I think Tarian's better now.
Okay. Better because of VME being gone, or do you think like
because not everybody is going to be railing for assets in every deck they show up with.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot fewer 4x Hacker Extraordinaire decks.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Tarian, it means he gets to keep all his speed hate by committing his assets and go down to 4. If you look at like Barlow's boards, I know Barlow's in the chat right now, it was not uncommon to see him reach turn 4 or 5 and still only have like maybe 5 or 6 foundations up and just a bunch of assets. And he now gets
like deadlock on assets alone, like no
rounding
error, no foundations.
He pops 2 foundations and his rival pops 8. That's gonna feel pretty good. And like I just talked about Hanji 1, I keep mentioning that Falling Titans deck I built was an 8 attack deck. It's because 4 were Falling Titans and 4 were Unyielding, so that way my opponent could never build a big enough board to actually set up an offense against me through all of my defensive abilities. This card scares me. I agree with Broberg. It is fucked up. But it's fucked up in a weird way where like it either will not matter. It will never be an A tier card, in my opinion. In a deck, it will either be like a C or D and not worth running, or it will be S tier and feel so toxic to play against this card, depending on its deck.
Interesting.
I think you can make an argument. I do want to roll back a little bit of what I said. You can argue that this is an A tier card in something like a Godzilla or an Annie that like is check hacking to play this late, resets to 4 because hey, he's fine taking a little bit longer to build up again, or he's check hacks are still going to be really good. Maybe it's A there.
I mean, this can easily be a side card in a wide range of decks that are happy to play 7 foundations against your 7. Right? Like I'm going to play this and build. You're going to build and defend. I have 7, you have 8, whatever. Let me see if I can get this done now, right? If against the decks that are really, 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 really super wide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the first thing I see in this card is I think of like my 4 checks, let's play some 9 decks, and I think, wow, everyone's gonna Godzilla me. I'm never gonna pass control check again. I guess I can't play this deck.
Yeah.
If I could build something else. And I think of the prison decks that are gonna say, yeah, I have 4, you have like, yeah, I'm gonna stun you, like I'm gonna like defense stun you, and you're gonna have 2 in play. Ha. I don't know if I believe in those decks at all, but that's kind of my thought process. This card exists sort of in the same dimension as press X is filled with doubt. Says if you're going too tall on an attack, you're trying to like 4 attack deck me. You can fill with doubt to answer that. This says if you're trying to ignore you're just gonna say I'm going to deal with your deadline. I'm going to build a 20 every game. Well, here we're going to have unyielding destruction to bring you back down to earth.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a chance where I guess 6 weeks after this releases or whatever, we're going to be sitting here saying like we've said before in certain other cases, or like I've said before, like UVS playtest just isn't craven enough. They're not degenerate enough heathens. They're not corrupted enough. They're not trying to build filthy enough stuff to break a card like this. Because that was kind of a vibe with Bertolt as well, right? Of just like, this card you could see this card getting through playtest if the playtesters just aren't devilish enough,
Yeah. I will say in that regard, I've mentioned a lot of cards I thought were like really scary that they printed here. Part of the reason I really reference that Hanji 1 deck is she runs 3 of them at 4 copies each. She runs 4 9s, she runs 4 Unyielding, she runs 4 Falling Titans. Because she goes, these are the most degenerate things this set has. What happens if we put them all in here and say that we're just trying to play a toxic game plan no matter what? Is that anything we can win off of?
What a W that like the worst character in AOT 1 is now exciting and playing all these new cards. Like,
yeah, I will say I had so much fun playing Hanji 1 on stream.
Positive experience.
That deck, now the one I actually really enjoyed was the one that was the 4-check version, because I think Titanic Capture, the rip one, that's the 6 low for 6. Oh, it's really fun to rip one, realize they don't hold a low block, and then double the damage of the 6 low for 6. It's real fun. It's a real good time.
Wait, that's really good.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a real fun deck. So I am glad. Again, Hanji 1 got the biggest power bump I've ever seen a character get. But even outside of Hanji 1, a lot of Unyielding Destruction is a card that could be concerning. Is there going to be a problem where Mimic has a good enough asset lineup that Mimic is totally fine playing his normal game plan, going to his rival's turn, blocking, checking an asset, or doing something to guarantee he checks an asset, picking this up and going, hey, you better get ready for the next turn. I'm resetting us both to 4.
I do not. I sort of refuse to believe that they printed this card without thinking that there was a chance it would be a problem. Like, they have to know there's some chance this card could become a problem, and they decide to print it because they're pushing the envelope, or someone really wanted to push this card through or whatever.
And I will say, talk about like toxic bandit decks and stuff. This card's a lot worse than Colossal Detonation. I'm actually gonna put that one on ink. Like, I would rather pay 12 diff and put you to 0 than pay 5 to put you to 4. If I'm cheating, right?
Right.
I don't want to be like, I'll pass the turn to you, and I'm player 1. I want to pass the turn to you and you're player 1 but I just took a build turn, right? This is turn 0 and now it's your turn 1. It's way better position than I'm player 1 and just finish my second turn, and that you get to attack me back with some cards in play. Like, you're so much stronger as player 0 as on before your opponent's turn 0 than their turn before their turn 1.
I think it's a reasonable argument.
Yeah, it's possible that the most toxic things you can do with this are to put him in like a Rodon.
Yeah.
Or like a character where, like, you killing Man 4 Foundations is actually really hard, and not just like, oh, I don't know, you only have 4 Foundations. Surely you can't do it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and kind of I will have to, in kind of in the same way of like I'm prepared to like put a take out there that proves to be wrong in the passage of time. Like with the Flying Titans deck, maybe I'm wrong. That deck's better than I think it is, or whatever, or we find a better idea of it. And certainly, I think the broad category of prison decks of like this, of just like defensive, like I'm gonna slow the game down and use this as a speed bump, to then back up with Breaker and back up with like Mitchell, like tapping. What's the Tinker's card? Master Drunken Fighting stuff. Like that's an angle you can take with this card. I just don't believe in them, and I'll have to see it before I believe it, because those decks, like they say, I'll play a long game, and then if I'm willing to play a long game, like I'm pretty good building decks for long games. So,
My one
and I'm not wasting my time with two mid sixes either.
I think my one concern with this card is because you mentioned this is better than or you think that the 12 diff is better. I do think there's an interesting difference there, which is that like if you draw 12 diffs, you are basically never playing both of them. If you draw 2 of this and your opponent outs the first one, you might just be able to play the second one and keep them in that position. It is probably harder to stop this ability from resolving because of that than it is to stop the 12 diff from resolving.
That's a good angle. That's true, yeah.
And so
And it's easier to play 4x in this deck than it is to play 4x detonation. Like no one played 4x detonation.
Exactly. And so that is, I'm interested to see if this card stops certain decks from being allowed to exist. You kind of mentioned it with Hanji. We mentioned it, and like I think it is. I think the Smiling Titan is unplayable with this existing is probably slightly overkill. Like she can still resolve an attack on 4 foundations, but there's certainly decks matchups that feel probably near unwinnable. Tarion already was a kind of a rough matchup. It probably feels unwinnable if he resolves this and he has a bunch of assets up. There are certainly ones like that I get concerned of seeing this card. And so I am a little worried that this card, because it can be played in multiple, because you can do it multiple times in a turn if you have the right hand for it, does it limit the deck space too much? Does it limit the decks that are allowed to exist and be fun and be interesting to play? And I don't know if that really exists in our game because we have such diverse metas. You can argue that that's never the case, even when there is a dominant deck, because, hey, you just won't see that many of it in Swiss. But I don't know. That is the one thing that concerns me, especially if this card with Infinity gets sideboarded a ton. I could see this becoming a very sideboard staple in a couple of copies.
Yeah, I think that's kind of its job ultimately, is to say if someone is supposed to, like, if someone is playing the game the wrong way, I can put this in my deck to solve that problem, for to bring that problem back down to earth, to put us back onto an even playing field.
And maybe that is the reverse of that. That like maybe we don't want like super wide board decks that are sitting there at 20 foundations. Maybe they looked at the fact that we saw those play at Worlds and we said, that's miserable. It is miserable to see a Ymir sit there at 20 foundations and mill out a Rodon because she can recoup time a million times. Maybe we said we want a more comprehensive way to address that, and this is that comprehensive way. I don't know. It's interesting that they just. I think the thing I would say about this, it is very interesting they decide to print this card, because there has to be a reason that they thought this was worth printing.
I mean, maybe like
some just thinks it's cool.
Maybe that's it.
It is cool. It kind of has the right vibes. I don't know.
Yeah, like there are two devils. It's like, on the one hand, I like to say it's always free to just not print something, because at the end of the day, if you don't print something that you think is cool, there's the possibilities are limited to find a different cool thing to print, and you'll still be printing a cool card. On the other hand, putting ink on 200 cards is kind of tough.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like, you have to come up with text that you're putting on cards, and you're trying to make them flavorful, and you have deadlines, and you have an idea and you think it's cool and you believe in it. And they probably, I assume they tested this and fiddled with different numbers besides 4, right? They probably tried it at 6 and tried it at 3 and tried it at 5 or whatever, and decided that 4 was the number to go with. And so, they think it is clearly, it's very splashy. It's certainly very flavorful. There's a lot of unyielding destruction going on here.
Yeah.
And they believe in it, and they want to print it, and they want to give it a chance and see if it's, if it doesn't have to be a net positive, right? So long as it's not too much of a negative, if they have to ban it.
Sure. And I would say that is kind of as a whole, a lot of these cards scare me. But if you put faith in the design team, not design team, the band team. I don't know if they're the same team or not.
They sort of.
So
if you
I
put
was like,
faith in
there's probably some
Universe's
overlap.
games,
if you put faith in UVS games to say we are committed to building a healthy meta, if one of these cards just destroys the game, makes the game miserably unfun when you sit across from it, we will do something to hit it. Maybe there will be a regional that sucks. Maybe there'll even be 2 regionals that sucks, but we will address this. Then I think it is fine to be experimental with these level of power. And you know what? I may come back 6 months and go, my God, the region Louisville, where unyielding was legal, was the most miserable regional I have ever sat through. But you know what? I'll have a story a year from now of what was really interesting that year in regionals. It'll be something that's worth talking about.
Confident Jamie can kill people on 4 foundations. I don't care.
I cannot wait for Jamie to come out.
I can't wait for me to just like not even play it. Right?
I know, right?
It comes out and like I have something else that I really like that I've been working on locally or whatever.
Yeah, I just can't wait for you, or I can't wait for it to come out and you play it and you go, this character's actually not good. Like I just actually didn't like what this did.
The only thing that will stop the character from being good is the symbols cannot hold their own defensively.
It's
right.
what
on a blank 7-handed.
It's what water,
it's water,
life,
it's air, water, fire, and
air,
we
water,
have to see what's in the decks. Yeah,
and air and fire haven't gotten the best defense in AOT.
You get the brawler enhance on the bow foundation.
Hell yeah!
It's free -1 speed,
dude. I love those. I keep wanting to build Jun to get that.
yeah.
I'm so sad that Luke doesn't get it because Luke is growing on me. I think that character is actually really cool, but he doesn't have water, so he doesn't get that foundation.
I don't think Jamie's cool. I think Jamie's boring as hell. I just think he's effective.
Sure. +3/+3 to +4/+4 on everything is real good.
Hey, Ojiro was fine. Anyways, we were actually making good pace to end at 90 minutes, and then Broberg and I argued for half an hour. So we're gonna go ahead and probably wrap it up here, unless anyone has some final thoughts.
I'll put in my hot take with this card. I think this card is perfectly fine, except in Elder Toguro. In the characters that can actually just recur at every single turn, it might be a problem.
I will scream.
But I think outside of that, this card is not going to be that big of a deal.
I'm just saying, Erwin Smith, put him to 4, build 1 My Soldier's Rage game.
Do it. Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. Sounds great.
Just
opposing Deku, sweeping daggers, you're My Soldier's Rage, you lose.
That would never happen to me. I'm too talented to check a My Soldier's Rage.
All right.
That was like both really cool and like, oh my god, sweeping daggers is so freaking dumb. At the same time.
It's
one of those things. It was really cool the first time. If it ever happens again, I'm just gonna be mad.
If I have to talk about, we could have a whole conversation about sweeping daggers and what it does for the game and the good and bad that it introduces. But we're at 2 hours. I can't do that to myself.
I'm gonna try to remember to I wish I'd gone home and immediately written a script to do a video about that game, because I remember the highlights of it now, but I would want to get into the details and be like, yeah, it was exactly lethal and it covered.
Yeah. I remember walking away from that feeling like, man, if this was a tournament, I got to see your deck list beforehand and actually process what I should be worrying about instead of being my first time facing this deck. It could have gone a lot differently. But I just walked into stuff.
I was so proud of myself that I didn't have to pick up your discard pile. I spotted the card. Not going to look in that direction anymore.
All right. We do got to wrap it up.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Let's go and do our goodbyes.
I'm 4 minutes late for a different plan. It's not pressing, but I did agree to a thing.
Let's start shouting out our channels. Broberg.
Yeah, I'm Broberg University on YouTube. I will post a video sometime.
Tim.
Yeah, Satonis on YouTube. If I stop getting sick, I will post a video sometime. I have something in progress that is actually in progress that might go up this weekend.
Will.
Nothing except for the 4Checks Cast YouTube channel.
Yes.
It's the same name on YouTube. Theoretically, Justin and I might get together sometime in the next week or so to do another Old Dogs New Quirks video. We'll see how that goes.
Yes. 4Checks Cast on YouTube. That's where our VODs are. Our VODs are a little bit behind because I've had end of year stuff as a teacher. But I'm going to try to get back on that, get all those up to date, get everything good to go. I'm hoping that we'll do sometime in the next week a second stream. So keep an eye out for that. We'll do hopefully No Dogs New Quirk. And we've got a project that we've done a lot of building for that if you've been paying attention, you might see some bits on. but I don't want to announce it till
I'm
things
at
are actually set in
2018.
stone. Yeah, I don't want to announce till things are set in stone, but there's one project I am incredibly excited for if all the pieces come together. With that in mind, we've been the 4 checks. I need to figure out what the raid button is. Let's see if I can figure that out real
Oh,
quick.
is someone streaming? Oh, Tam's streaming. Yeah, let's raid
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, if I could figure out how to actually raid someone. Is there a way to do that from OBS?
Can I do it?
That would be
you
from
can.
OBS.
Oh, mods can do it, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing how to do it.
They're all just going to move over there
Just
before we
your
finish
dashboard,
raiding.
dude.
Yeah, but if I could figure it out, it's
You're
great.
clearly
There's-
all
there's a way
following
to
Tam.
review
Just
it.
go.
Slash raid.
Let's-
Oh, hold on.
let's
Someone's
pull the
got
raid.
it. Tam Cardwell. All right,
There
you
we
guys are
go.
raiding Tam Cardwell. I figured out how to do
Yeah,
it.
nice.
Goodbye.
Double-digit raiders. Let's go.
We've doubled Tam's viewership.
Raid.
Yep, here we are.
All right.
Oh, he's taking Barrett to task for all the stuff they printed.
Now I
Probably.
gotta hit the stop streaming button.